Oh, what a night. Late December back in 63. He was home and how he be. What a lady, what a night. Okay.
I don't know the lyrics to that one.
Oh, I got a funny feeling when she walked into the room, and as I recall, it ended much too soon. Oh, what a night. Michael's gonna edit this. He's gonna edit this and be like, "What? What the fuck were you doing?"
Look, movies like this end when the final girl kills the main bad guy and the credits roll.
Welcome to Final Girl Podcast. This is the podcast where we're discussing and analyze your favorite horror movies. My name is Ryan Turner. With me today, I have the lovely Jason Schafer. How you doing, sir?
I am doing fantastic.
You happy to be here?
Yes.
You seem reluctant to answer that question, and I don't know if I believe you or not.
I might have to be with the being on video for the first time.
Being on video for the first time ever?
This is the first time I've ever been on video for a podcast.
I don't. For the podcast, yes. I was going to say, it's not the first time you've been on video, though, because I know you used to stream.
Yeah, it is true, but that's a little different.
It's a little different because usually when people are watching you stream, you know, they're focused on the game that you're playing and not necessarily this ugly mug here. But I mean...
You're just kind of winging it. You're just reacting to the game the whole time.
Exactly.
So that's a little bit different, yeah.
Well, you know, we're going to roll through this. You're going to stop being awkward. Stop just staring into space. You can't help that. I know. It's just your face. But regardless, we're going to move into this podcast today, guys, because today we have an interesting episode. I was going to say a doozy of an episode, but I don't know necessarily it's going to be super, you know, like a doozy of an episode. I think we're going to have a good episode. I think we're going to definitely touch on a lot of interesting topics with this episode.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you were telling me a story before we started recording about how you were watching this movie last night with your wife and her friend, and they're just like, what the fuck? What are you doing?
Olivia's friend was not happy with me after watching that. She was like mortified. You know, she didn't want to drive home.
I will say, you know, obviously we'll get into the movie here in a second, but I don't, and we'll talk about this as we go through, but I don't think this movie is necessarily like overtly graphic as a whole. I think there's one scene where it's like legitimately just, I'm uncomfortable. You know?
Yes. Yes.
But after that scene, I think, you know, it's a pretty standard horror movie, and you know, for being a remake, which, yes, guys, if you can't tell already the title, we are doing the remade version of this film. I don't think they went too over the top with the gore. Now, granted, I did watch the R-rated version versus the unrated version. But the unrated version, all I've seen, and doing research on that, was just it just extended the scenes with the gore, so it wasn't like... Yeah.
So I watched the unrated version, and there was some pretty kind of gross gore, but like some of the gore was also kind of B-movie-ish too. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit like, not going to spoil it, but... It's
a 2006 remake, horror remake, and if you know anything about horror whatsoever, the early 2000s were prime real estate for remade horror movies. And what they did was they took the film, they just upped the gore, they upped the violence, they upped the nudity, and that's what we had in the early 2000s was a bunch of remade stuff. And so it makes sense to have more gore in this film than the original, but all in all, I don't think it's overtly graphic.
No, I think it's just enough that it adds some to the film, but it's not like to the point. There's other movies I've seen that are way
absolutely
on top of the line compared to this one.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, for those who don't know or haven't looked at the title or anything of this episode yet, we are doing The Hills Have Eyes, the 2006 remake version. Now, before everyone goes crazy and flames me for not doing the original 1977 version, I believe it was.
Yeah,
it was in the 70s, 77, 78. I'm gonna be honest. I don't lie to you guys. We don't do that here. Okay, we're friends. We don't do that here. I've not seen the original version. Now, you could be saying, Ryan, well, there's also been movies you've not seen until the day or two before you recorded the podcast, and you're right, there are. I just wanted to do the remake version because I think the remake version does something different than what the original version did. I know enough about the original to be able to say I think the remake does it better in terms of driving home the point the movie's trying to make.
This one definitely cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah, and also too, I also wanted to just watch a movie that was full of blood because the 70s version doesn't have that much gore. It has it, but this one obviously ups the ante. So I just wanted to, I've seen the remake before. This was the first time. This was the first Hills Have Eyes I've ever seen. When it came out in 2006, I watched it several times through high school and college, and so I was most familiar with this version. So that's why I wanted to do this version versus the 70s version. Now, will I ever do the 70s version? Maybe eventually. I don't know how much content I can pull out of it though if we're doing the remake. I don't know how much different it would be.
I mean, so I haven't watched it either, but just doing research on it, it seemed like it was almost like just a big portion of it was just a different artistic take on the idea.
Well, because it was Wes Craven.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wes Craven was a horror genius, and I will forever love the man's movies, and I will forever respect him, but I just wanted to do the remake version for this episode. So I'm sorry if that offends some of you listeners and viewers. I'm sorry for you. Like, if anyone out there who's like a horror purist, you're just like, oh, you're not going to do the original version, you're going to do the shitty remake version. The story is more or less the same. And I think you're going to get the same content out of this episode you would get out of the 70s version. So
probably, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously things are different in the 70s version than it is in this one. And there might be some story changes and things like that too. I know especially one of the biggest changes is the fact that in the 70s version, they aren't mutants really. They are more just like, they're not mutated because of a nuclear fallout. They're more just mutated from years of incestual breeding.
I did not read that part, so
at least that's what I think. If I recall correctly, that's what I remember. Is that the mutants in the 70s version were more mutated because of incestual breeding from years, and it was more kind of like what's the guy's name in Scotland who, with his family, they were a bunch of cannibals? Shoddy Bean, is that what his name is? Or I don't remember what his name is.
Your guess is
someone let me know. Someone let me know what I'm thinking about. But there was a group of there was a family in Scotland who back in like 1600s, 1700s, I don't even remember. They basically got stranded in the mountains and resorted to cannibalism and incestual breeding to keep going on and everything, and eventually got caught and murdered or not murdered, but like put on trial for their horrendous ways. And I think the 70s version was supposed to be based on that storyline, like loosely based on that storyline. Again, I could be wrong. If I am, someone correct me. If you want to look that up right now, if not, no big deal. But I'm just saying that's from what I recall off the top of my head. I don't have that in my notes here in front of me. But with all of that out of the way, I think we're going to go ahead and just jump into this film because you were texting me last night, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this film because you kept saying, I got so much to say, man. I got so much to say.
Yeah, this movie really got me riled up. I was actually like found myself almost furious.
Almost furious.
just so mad at like some of the situations and scenes that come out. Like there's certain things in movies I just cannot deal with. And this movie, unfortunately, had to throw some of that in there.
Some of those in there, yeah. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into The Hills Have Eyes, the 2006 remake edition. Now, again, like I always say, I apologize if I butcher some of the names that are in here, if people involved. I'm going to give it my best shot. So this version of this film is directed by Alexander Aja, I believe is how you say his name, and is also written by him and Gregory Levasseur. It's a French last name. Levasseur. I am terrible at pronouncing names, and I apologize, about that. This movie stars Aaron Stanford, Kathleen Quinlan, Vanessa Shaw, Emily de Ravine, I believe is how you would say her last name, Dan Bird, Robert Joy, and Ted Levine, who I love me some Ted Levine. I forgot he was in this movie until I watched it again. I was like, oh my God, Ted Levine's in this film. And he plays, honestly, I don't think you could have picked someone else than Ted Levine, but I think he plays this role that he's assigned perfectly.
Oh, he did really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering why I recognized that guy's face. I was like, I've seen in a movie before too. So
yeah, he was the police captain in Monk, so that's where I knew him from mostly. So with all that being said, guys, as you know by now, spoiler warning in effect. We're going to dissect this entire movie from front to back, talk about what we think it means, talk about, the inner workings of this film. So if you have not seen The Hills Have Eyes, go ahead, pause this episode. We'll be here when you come back. All right. Go watch the film. It's not a long watch. I say this a lot because oftentimes these movies are not super long. It was about, an hour and 40 minutes? I think is what it is.
It was about 148, I think.
Yeah, it's not a super long movie, and especially once it starts going, it goes by quick. It's a quick watch. Now, that being said, obviously, this is, like we said, this is a remake version from the early 2000s. So if you know that style of movie from the early 2000s, it's very much that, gristly, graphic, uncomfy at times movie.
Grungy, yeah.
So if you're not into that, maybe skip this one. But still listen to the episode if you're interested in hearing what we got to say about it. So let's go ahead and just dive into them thar hills, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, great. So the film opens up. We have a group of scientists out in the desert. And these scientists are going around with the Geiger machines is what they're called, I believe, to where they're testing the radiation levels.
Yeah.
I think they're called Geiger machines. And so they're going around testing the radiation, and all of a sudden, one of them's looking around, and a bloodied man comes up and grabs him and says, "Please help me." And then before we can even react, the scientist gets a pickaxe through the face, through the back of the head and out of his face. And then just utter chaos ensues, and all the scientists end up dead and being dragged off by the mutants who live in the desert. So that is our opening scene. That kind of throws us right into the mix. And then we get this opening title sequence of a bunch of vintage, bomb tests where they're dropping the bombs in New Mexico. And testing out the atom bombs and everything. And so it definitely, sets the scene up right away of what we're doing and where we're at.
So there was an interesting thing I read about some of the photos you see in this beginning, some of the deformed people. Those are actually children that were victims of Agent Orange chemical.
Okay, I was wondering if they were I knew they were real pictures, but
Agent Orange was basically a chemical weapon that was used in a bunch of different wars. The most well-known was Vietnam. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, where they kind of got some of the imagery of what these mutants should look like.
Yeah, because they're definitely taking that idea of these are people who were victims of this testing and this radiation and nuclear fallout, and therefore they took, it makes sense to take images and take ideas from victims of Agent Orange and apply it to this as well, because it'd be almost along the same results.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, really, because in their case, it caused genetic deformities that have carried across generations. Mm-hmm. And that's what this movie is about, is you're seeing the effects of that over generations of them trying to survive as this now more horrid creature.
Exactly. So once the title sequence is over, we arrive at a service station in the middle of nowhere. It says we're in New Mexico, but like literally we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's dunes everywhere. There's mountains everywhere. And I have in my notes that this was in the X-ray notes on Amazon. The service station is called Gas Haven, which rhymes with Wes Craven.
Okay.
I mean,
that's kind of clever, I guess.
They're paying homage to the original director and everything, so I don't know. I would have never pieced that together if it hadn't been for the X-ray notes, but they're just like, it's Gas Haven, which rhymes with Wes Craven. So, I don't know. I find it funny though. So at this gas station, we have this elderly man who he has a pig. And I don't know if the pig like gets let off the chain or something, but he goes out looking, like shouting around outside in the desert. And he calls out several different names, and we hear like Jupiter, we hear Pluto. I think he says Pluto, I can't remember. But he says all these different names, and we're just like, who is he talking to?
Yeah.
What is going
Pluto
on
is
here?
one of them.
Is Pluto one of them? Yeah. I know Pluto is one of the characters. I just don't remember if he calls out for Pluto here at this point. We're just like, what is going on here? And he arrives back at this gas station eventually, and he's just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. It's over. And we're left in the dark as to what exactly he's talking about.
I think there was also like a bag that showed up on the front doorstep, right?
Yeah, there was a bag that showed up there, and it's we find out later it's full of like valuables, like gold and money and things like that. Because what we can assume is from what like the pieces we get later on in the movie, we can assume that he is helping the mutants kill and get food. So they're killing people and getting food that way, and they're repaying him by giving him all their valuables. So that's just what we can assume is what's happening here. But this old man clearly he's had it. He's done doing this. He doesn't want to do it anymore. The next day, however, we have a family show up. This is the Carter family. The Carter family is on vacation. They're heading to San Diego. And Big Bob Carter, the leader of the family, decides he wants to drive through the desert instead of flying out to San Diego. He's got this old Airstream all remodeled that he just did and everything, and he's like gung-ho to just drive his whole family across the desert.
See, this part right here, it feels like, I don't know what movie exactly, but like just one of those family film movies where it's just like the dad's all like, come on, kids, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what, it builds character.
It's like, this movie is the horror version of RV.
Yeah. Basically.
The Robin Williams movie where he takes his family on a vacation across country in an RV. Yeah, this is the horror version of RV. But they pull up to the gas station to get gas, and we get introduced to the Carter family. So in the Carter family, we have Big Bob, who is the head of the family, his wife, Ethel, their daughter, Lynn, and we also have daughter, what's the other daughter's name? Brenda. I wanted to say Beth, and I knew that wasn't right. Brenda, son Bobby, and then Lynn's husband, Doug. And then also, too, with them, we have Lynn and Doug's daughter, Catherine. So we've got a big group of people in this RV. And on top of that, they also have 2 dogs and 2 birds with them as well. So we've got the 2 German Shepherds, Beauty and Beast, which I want to talk about that here in a second. And then we also have the 2 birds, which obviously there's no name given to the birds. Yeah. So... it's here where things, start getting creepy because obviously the family's there long enough to start exploring around and seeing, this guy's house and, his building and everything going on here while Bob gets a tank filled up. And we also start to learn here there's obviously some tension in this family. Like, the daughters, they don't really want to be driving across country. They'd rather just, fly out there. Doug and Big Bob do not get along well whatsoever. There's very obviously some tension between the 2 of them. And we just, Ethel, she's just there. She's like, oh, things are so great.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah, that sort of naive, like, mom character.
Exactly.
Like, this is so nice. Grace, we're getting out of the house.
So I wanted to point this out because honestly, I don't know if they did this on purpose or not. But later in the movie, we do go to like the mining town where the mutants all live, and we see all of like the dummies that the government has set up for the test sites. And it's almost like they made Ethel's character to be like a Stepford wife. She has like, she's just kind of going along there, going along with what her husband wants to do, even though she might have her own desires, but she's just kind of bland.
Kind of being like that whole, I got to be a good housewife. But yeah, she does kind of fill that character of like that time period.
Exactly.
Kind of just, she's there, the one baking the cookies for the visitors and things like that. Yeah.
And they even mentioned too that like she grew up in the 60s because they were like saying, shouldn't you have more fun? You grew up in the 60s and everything.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And there's
Called
like
her
this
hippie.
little, because her husband, Bob, calls her like a little hippie.
She wasn't always like this.
She wasn't always like this, yeah. And I think, that kind of just goes and stems into the whole idea of like, she wasn't always like this because the mutants weren't always like this. It's just like, that we keep hitting on this idea of people change. And people change a lot in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely, just from all the different external things that occur, people change based on that. Yeah.
People change a lot, yeah. So as they're getting gas and filling up, we have this incident that kind of just sets off like a theme for the rest of the film. Not really a theme, but kind of like a little motif here.
Yeah.
To where Beauty runs off. Like one of the dogs runs off. And Lynn ends up finding the dog and bringing it back. And it just kind of sets up the idea that these dogs are not very well behaved. They're going to keep running off. And if y'all know horror movies, when dogs are in a movie, things don't always end well.
This is one of those parts I was talking about.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. So, one thing I wanted to mention about the dogs before we move on from this part, their names are Beauty and Beast. Now, obviously, that is a connection to Beauty and the Beast, the Disney movie. But I also think, too, it's a potential reference to Beauty being, the civilized family that we have with the Carters, and Beast being the mutants who live out in the mountains.
The funny thing is, based on watching the whole film, I think you're probably right.
And there's something else I want to touch on that later when we get when we keep going.
Right.
Yeah. But I just wanted to bring that point up now before we continued on with this. So the family all gets back together. They get in their car, and before they drive off, the old man. And now I don't know why he decides to set them up to die. I think it might be because he feels that Lynn saw his bag of money and his bag of belongings from one of the other families that was dropped off at his house. I think that might be the only reason he decides to do it, because he doesn't want them to go and tell on him that he's got all these valuables. So that's my only reason why I think he decides to send them off to their death rather than actually give them real directions. But he decides to let them know there's a shortcut up the road. You go up this dirt road, go off to the path. There's a sign, you can't miss it. And it'll lead you right to the highway, cut off about an hour or so of your trip. So Bob decides to joyfully take that road. And as they're heading out that way, sure enough, it's not a shortcut, because we see a spike strip set up in the road. And they hit the spike strip and wreck the car and total it. And now our family is stuck out in the desert. So after this big wreck, there's a lot of tension between Bob and Doug. And that only seems to escalate here at this point. Because Bob is very much like, I'm in charge, I'm the head of this household, I will do this. Whereas Doug is like, he's more rational, down to earth, but he's also like, what are we going to do? We need to figure out what the hell we're going to do here at this point.
He was definitely the analytical, sort of nerdy guy for this, where he's kind of like, oh, well, this is what reality is. Like, wake up call, guys. Like, come on, what are we doing? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very important to note that is what his character is like, because obviously the changes he goes through the movie, it's very important to note he is an analytical person. He thinks things through. He's very rational. He's very level-headed, because he switches about midway through this movie.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that.
Right.
So we also have this scene too where after they wreck, Bob is taking out stuff from the car, and he pulls out 2 pistols. He gives one to his son Bobby, and he gives one keeps one for himself. And there's this joke made about, well, shouldn't we give Doug a gun? And Bob says, oh no, Doug couldn't handle one. He probably doesn't know how to use it. He's a Democrat.
So this part really got me just because I'm a political person. So I laughed my ass off so hard. Olivia was dying because she's just like, oh, Jason's eating this shit up right now. Yeah. So this kind of like was like a punch in the face. That was like, there's going to be some political themes in this movie.
And there definitely are. And this is the first of many. But I think, obviously, we don't know the whole backstory. I think there's more to it, to the tension between Doug and Bob than just the fact they had political differences. But it seems to be, this is one of the main driving forces of their tension, is the fact that Bob and Doug just don't agree on anything, whether it be how to do simple tasks or how to do, or who to vote for.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like they're also kind of playing in a lot of those political stereotypes.
Oh, definitely. I think Bob is 100% playing on the political stereotypes of Republicans.
Yeah, he's like an old school, like, evangelist conservative, while the other guy, or I forget his name. Doug, he's kind of like probably more of like a... maybe a progressive kind of type. Mm-hmm. Obviously, don't want to get into that too much, but like they're definitely playing into those roles. Like it's ridiculous how much that imagery is
100%
played into.
And it's funny that it's played into that heavily in 2006. Like, I mean, obviously, I was 14 in 2006, so I wasn't like super into politics or anything. But it's funny to think, that divide between these two characters because of their political backgrounds is still so relevant in 2021. If maybe more so than it was in 2006.
Oh, definitely. I mean, things are so much more polarized now than they were then, but there is still a polarity going on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If you look at like a lot of like the United States political, like just what's been in the past few elections, like it was slowly drifting, and no one noticed until it was kind of too late.
Right. We kind of let it go until it was too late.
Yeah. So
to bring it all back. So after this kind of like, little joke at Doug's expense, Bob and Doug decide to go off and try to find help. They leave Bobby at the trailer with his sisters and his mom, and they decide to go off and try to find help. Doug goes off towards the interstate, whereas Bob goes back towards the gas station. So also, too, during this time, before they all leave, the dogs run off again. And Bobby has to go out and chase them down and bring them back. So just, again, driving home the point that these dogs, if they're not chained up, they're going to run off.
Yep.
And it's surely, not much time happens. And Brenda, who is out sunbathing, like Brenda's treating this like it's a vacation. She's
in her 2-piece. She's just like, woo!
She's just like laying out in the sun. She's like, I'm going to go to Cabo this summer. And her older sister's like, well, if you want to go to Cabo, you got to get a job and everything. And Brenda's very much like that. I don't know. I'd say she's like 18, like late teenager, early 20s kind of character where she's like, I don't care what you say. I want to do what I want to do. And
she's going to get what she wants. She's definitely playing that also caricature of just a teenager who's a little rebellious, but also expects like handouts from their parents.
Exactly.
That kind of stereotypical,
like 100% wants those handouts from her parents.
Yeah. She's like, I'm going to go on that trip. It's just how it's going to be.
So after Doug and Bob head off and everyone's left back at the camp, Brenda goes to get inside of the Airstream and opens the door, and Beauty takes off. And Bobby's just like, son of a bitch, Brenda. You know how much time I spent getting them back in the camper or the trailer? And so he goes taking off after Beauty, and tries to go find her, and he follows her. We don't even know how far into the desert. Like they, are pretty distant away from the Airstream now. And he's, calling out for her. And it's at this point we start getting some POV shots through the eyes of people watching Bobby. We see a character who's looking through binoculars, and we also have this girl who we see a little bit of. Her name's Ruby. She's a family. She's with the family of mutants. Earlier in the movie, she took Bobby's hoodie, So, and more of this later in a second, but I don't know if there's some kind of connection she's drawing with Bobby, if it's just like, she likes him and she has a crush on him, or if it's just more of a... I don't know what to make of it, because she protects him later on.
I'm afraid to get too deep, but I also don't know if that's supposed to suggest that she has held on to her humanity. Maybe?
I think of all of the people in that family, I think Ruby 100% has held on to her humanity the most.
Yeah. And so I wonder if, like, her wanting to wear human clothes, so to speak, and not just the ragged shit that they wear, maybe she's, like, trying... That's kind of like her character development towards trying to redeem herself from
to be
her
more
ugly
human.
history. Yeah, like because she's the youngest, so...
Well, she's not the youngest. She's one of the youngest. Remember, there's the two little kids as well.
That's right. I forgot about that.
But we'll talk about them later. But regardless, Bobby's chasing Beauty through the mountains, and inevitably, y'all knew this was coming. Everyone knew this was coming. We hear the sound of a dog whimpering. Yeah, and Bobby rightfully panics a little bit and runs up the hill, where he finds Beauty dead and mutilated on the ground. And in this, like, sight of his dog dead, obviously he freaks out. He starts crying. But then he realizes that she's been, like, cut open. It wasn't like a coyote did this or anything. He realizes this was someone, not something.
Yeah, that scene kind of... Again, the gore is only so realistic, but just the idea of, like, lifting them up like it's just a freaking, like, the skin of the animal and that's it. I was just like, oh, my God. I'm like, this is... I can't. I had to walk away from the room for a second. I just cannot deal with, like, seeing dead animals like that.
It's so funny too, and I think this I think will tie into a little bit of what we're going to talk about later on. But it's so funny that we as a society, like, I've brought this up before in the episode in the past. We get so upset and hate seeing animals die in horror movies. Yet we have no, like, care in the world if the humans that are on screen die.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, it sometimes if I bond with the character enough, I might get upset. But yeah, for the most part, I'm like, this is a horror movie. I've got myself psychologically prepared for everyone to be
But
dead.
then we also, too, should be psychologically prepared that the dogs are going to die as well. But yet, when they die, we still are like,
there is literally a spoiler website which I literally...
Does the dog die?
Doesthedogdie.com, yeah. Will the dog die? It's... Oh my God, it is like... I had to read it. I spoiled it for myself because I'm just like, listen, if it's going to be all this, the entire movie, I'm like, I can deal with one. But if it's like 3 or 4, I'm like,
Yeah.
So...
Now, real quick before we move on to what happens next, I wanted to bring up that point I mentioned earlier about Beauty being an idea for the civilized family and Beast being the mutant family. So I think if we're going to take that point for what it's worth, I think this scene drives home that idea, because Beauty is the first to die. Like, Beast doesn't die first. Beauty dies first. So I think it further drives the point home that Beauty is supposed to symbolize this family who's about to get murdered, whereas Beast is more of the savage, like, kind of beast that his name suggests.
Yeah, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I think it definitely falls into that idea of, like, you're going to have to let go of your civilized, like, rational mindset if you're going to survive.
Exactly.
You basically have to play by the mutants' rules if you want to live.
So after Bobby discovers his dog, he rightfully panics and freaks out, and he starts to run away when he falls off of this, like, cliff and knocks himself unconscious. Now at this point, this is where Ruby comes out dressed in Bobby's hoodie that she took earlier, and she comes over to him and, like, makes sure he's still breathing and checks on him. And she looks up because, like, drops of blood drip down on Bobby's face, and she looks up and she sees another one of the mutants. I believe it's her brother, Goggle.
Yeah, Goggle.
Yep. Yeah. And he's just laughing as he's eating one of Judy's
He's just
legs.
eating like a freaking huge chicken leg.
Yeah.
So this part I laughed a little bit just because it just seemed ridiculous. He's just
This right here is the same kind of stuff that you get in like Wrong Turn, where those characters, the hillbillies, were just eating like raw animal parts, like it's just a big old turkey leg. I'm just
like mutton or something. Yeah, I'm just like, oh my god.
I don't care how uncivilized you are. You still gonna cook your food. You're not just gonna be eating raw dog meat.
Well, and the thing is that even though they were mutants, they still had some semblance of.
They gonna get salmonella.
That is true.
So I don't know. Maybe
I have no idea.
We don't know how far out the evolution of this.
Yeah, like
family
how
has
many
gone.
Generations of.
We can assume though it's not super long though, because if you look at Papa Jupiter, he's not mutated and he's supposed to be the head of that whole clan. So we can assume it's only been, maybe 20, 30 years at most. So I don't know. But regardless, Bobby knocks himself out. Ruby protects him from Goggles so no harm comes to him. And then we cut back to Doug, who has walked about 5 miles out from the campsite. And as he's walking, he discovers this giant crater in the earth. And this crater, as he walks closer to it, is full of abandoned cars and items and things like that in there. And Doug just thinks this is so cool. He thinks it's, it's something he's never seen before. It's very interesting to him. What he doesn't realize, though, is as he walks around the cars, one of the side of the cars is just smeared with blood. But he doesn't see that 'cause it's on the other side of the car.
Yeah.
So he misses that. But this clearly is the dump site for everyone that the clan murders. They just dump their cars and their items here and then take the valuables back to the old guy at the shop. Mm-hmm. So Doug collects a couple things. Like he gets a teddy bear out of the car and he collects a fishing pole.
Yeah, he
grabs the most random stuff and decides to take that back to the family and kind of let them know what he found.
This was one of those parts where I was kind of like, is he really that rational? I'm like he just kind of well, this is cool. This
That's
is
pretty dope. Yeah.
I'm like, maybe he's rational, but I think he's also naive. He's just a cell phone salesman.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the grungier parts of life and nastier parts,
because
so to speak.
From what we can gather of his back life is he's a city boy.
Definitely a city boy.
He's grown up in the city. He's never really had to deal with anything like this before. So I think someone like him, something across something like that, he'd just be like, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because I'm like, why are you taking the fucking teddy bear? I'm like,
he's going to take it back to his daughter. His daughter needs toys.
I guess it is true.
And he's just a cell phone salesman, so he can't afford a whole lot. So
didn't sell enough cell phones this month. Yeah,
it was a down month. So from there, we cut back to the gas station. It is now nighttime, and Bob goes in. He starts calling out for the attendant. I also find it funny. Okay, so obviously Bob's been walking for a long distance. It's been miles. It's a hot desert he's out in. He walks in the gas station and grabs a bottle of water out of the fridge. But right beside the little bottle that he grabs, there's a half-gallon bottle of water. If it was me and I just been walking for 5 miles through the desert, I'd have been give me the gallon, just down in it,
Yeah,
and he obviously has money. He pulls out a money clip and throws a couple dollars on the counter. He's like, I stole. He's like, I got a water. Hope you don't mind. And throws the money down on the counter so he can pay for the bigger water. I don't know. I was just
I probably was an oversight.
I'm just
honestly.
nitpicking.
Yeah,
I'm literally just nitpicking, but still.
Well, I mean, if you're wanting to make, I'm not trying to be too funny about this stuff, but if you're wanting to make a good horror movie or a good movie, you want to make sure your props make sense.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I see what you're saying. That that's kind of it obviously took him hours in the desert.
Absolutely, yeah.
So he's probably dehydrated to the
because he took one bottle of water with him.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But regardless, the size of the water that he grabbed, Doug starts looking around the store. He's calling out for the attendant. He can't find him. He goes into his little house side of things inside the store. And it's here he finds the big bag of goods, the jewelry, a money clip. He starts digging around a little bit more. And on the wall behind him, he sees a bunch of newspaper clippings. And these newspaper clippings have a whole bunch of headlines about nuclear testing out in this area and how it causes, radiation poisoning, how it's caused mutations in humans, in the miners who refuse to leave their homes. And so there's just a bunch of information that we get basically in just a bunch of quick shots.
Yeah.
All at once.
This throws like a lot of background context into what the hell's going on for this movie.
Then we also too get a bunch of clips about like families disappearing out here. So we know that there's been nuclear testing. We know that families have been disappearing. It just gives you basically the movie just decides here's your whole backstory in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, this movie was really, well, good or bad, whichever way you want to look at it, about going from 0 to 100 for sure. Yeah.
Well, talking about going 0 to 100, because literally at this point, after Bob sees all the newspaper clippings, he hears a sound from outside, and he goes out. He's looking around, and he sees the gas attendant's car, and he tries to turn it on, and that's when he hears a noise in the outhouse. And he goes to the outhouse with his gun ready and everything, and we hear the attendant from inside calling out to Jupiter. He keeps saying, "Jupiter, I can't do this anymore. I have buckshot, Jupiter. Leave me alone," and all this stuff like that. And so Bob opens up the door and finds the attendant inside with a bottle of Jack Daniels and a loaded shotgun in his lap. And Bob's telling him, put the gun down. Come out here. We'll talk about this. He's like, "My family's stranded. I need your help." And the attendant just says, "I can't do this anymore. I'm done." And he pulls the shotgun up, puts it to his chin, and pulls the trigger and kills himself. And right after this happens, we just hear a bunch of whispers from all around Bob. Daddy. Just whispering, "Daddy. Daddy." Yep. "Daddy." And Bob rightfully is freaked out. He just saw a man kill himself, and now he's hearing people talking around him. So he runs back to the car real quick, tries to start it again, and it's at this point he looks in the rearview mirror, and we see Papa Jupiter in the car behind him, and he messes Bob up. Like, he takes his head, slams it into the steering wheel, into the window, in the other window. Like, blood spurts up the side of the window. He hits him so hard in the head. He messes him up, and he then takes him and lugs him back into their mine, capturing him. So after Bob has been captured, Bobby is found by Brenda, and they go back to the trailer, and as Bobby's getting stitched up and doctored up by his mom, Doug returns, and he starts talking about all the stuff he found out in the crater. He's like, "Look at all this cool stuff I found out here. I got a fishing pole." And Lynn's like, "What are we gonna do with a fishing pole in the middle of the desert?" She's like, "What the hell are we gonna do with this fishing pole?"
That's what I was
in the middle of the desert. It's just all this crap he took. I don't know. Comedic relief, I guess, obviously at this point for this movie, because we just witnessed a man kill himself, and we also just saw a man get the shit beat out of him and captured and taken somewhere. But regardless, as they're talking, Bobby obviously is not okay, because Brenda or Lynn, I don't remember which one, they say, "Oh, Bobby, it's okay. Calm down. Beauty will come back, whenever she gets hungry. So it'll be all right." But obviously Bobby knows better than that. And he tries telling Doug, but before he can say anything, Doug and Lynn decide they're ready to go to bed, because Doug obviously has been walking all day long. He's tired. He wants to go to sleep. And he tells Bobby, he's like, "Listen, I know you're shaking up right now, but if your dad's not back by midnight, we'll go out and look for him." Okay? So if he's not back by midnight, we'll go look for him. So he and Lynn go to sleep in the car, like the SUV, while Bobby, Brenda, and Ethel all stay in the Airstream, along with Catherine, the baby. So while they're all in the Airstream and in the car, sleeping, we hear some noises outside, and Bobby, rightfully so, freaks out and panics, grabs his gun and walks outside, and we notice that Beast is missing. He's been let off his chain, and he's now missing. And so Bobby quickly runs over to the SUV, starts banging on the window, saying, "Someone's out here, someone's doing something. There's people in these hills." And obviously Doug and Lynn are like, you're crazy. Okay, there's obviously no one out here. We're in the middle of the desert. There's no way there's people out here. And he tells them the whole story. He's like, "Listen, Beauty's dead. I saw her body. I didn't want to freak Mom and Brenda out, but Beauty is dead." she was gutted, basically. He's like, I didn't want to freak him out, but someone did this to her. Someone had to have done this. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't an animal. This was a human. And while he's basically telling the story, Pluto and Lizard, who are two of the mutants, are able to infiltrate inside the trailer. And this is where things begin to get uncomfy. Yeah.
This was where I'm just like, oh no.
This is where,
please stop.
This is where you get the, malevolent character who clearly has not, had an attention of a woman ever in his lifetime, other than potentially his own family members. Sees another woman who's outside of his family, and yeah. So we're gonna skip over nothing ever explicit happens in this scene. It's very heavily implied that they attempt to sexually assault her, but they never show anything, obviously. They do beat the shit out of her, though, while they're trying to do this. Pluto and Lizard both. And then they're able to get away with this because, basically, as soon as Brenda wakes up and realizes what's going on, Pluto or I don't remember which one it is, it might be Lizard, over a walkie-talkie says, "Jupiter now." And we hear a big explosion outside. And Doug, Lynn, Bobby, and Ethel all run outside and realize that the tree that's now on fire, Bob is tied to it.
So much shit is just happening so fast at this point. I'm like, it's like, don't even realize, like, this is one of those parts where I'm just like, holy shit, like, they're just throwing this
It's just
in their face.
Just
like,
boom, boom,
they're
boom,
not
what's
even
going on,
psychologically being given a chance to ease into this.
And
at
I think that's one of the major downfalls of this film is it's not necessarily a psychological horror. This is very much like a straight up just like, I don't want to call it a torture porn. I wouldn't say it's a torture porn, but it's like we're going to edge on that territory, but we're also going to be kind of like a slasher. But just it's a gross out film.
Yeah. It was weird for me because, like, in some cases I saw the psychological horror, like, ugh, like right there in that part of that movie. I'm like, ugh. And it's like, it's not kind of like a slasher. It's not super scary.
I don't want to say it's an exploitation film because I don't think it is, but it borderlines exploitation
I feel
film.
like they're basically with this film kind of experimenting with a lot of different.
There's a lot of genres.
Like
thrown in
they're
here.
kind of just mushing a lot.
Yeah.
Whether that went out great or not, I guess is kind of up to anyone's opinion. But I just found that kind of interesting.
Yeah. So they find Bob tied to a tree, being burned alive. And I hate this because I hate everything that happens in this next part. But what I hate at this moment is Doug runs into the trailer to get a fire extinguisher, says, "Brenda, watch the baby," and runs back out without even realizing that there are two men on top of Brenda holding her down, muffling her screams. This part, I get you're distracted, bro, but like, come on.
How do you not see that? I mean, just from my own thought process of like, people always catch shit in the back corner of their eye, right?
Yeah.
Like, and get that feeling someone's watching them or whatever. Like, people's senses are pretty good. Even during like fight or flight. Like, you would think that he would be like, oh shit, is someone like, how can you be that forgetful?
Like, he literally runs in, like, if I'm Doug and you are Brenda over here on my side, he runs in, grabs a fire extinguisher, says, "Brenda," he's looking at the fire extinguisher, "Brenda, watch the baby," and turns around and runs back out. I'm just like, dude.
It was just way too convenient. I had a lot of criticism for this part.
Yeah.
Like, they really should have executed this differently.
If they wanted to do this kind of thing, they should have executed it differently because the way they did it, it made it seem like they only put this in there because they wanted a sexual assault scene.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Again, I did not watch the 70s version of this movie. I don't know if this scene is in there or not. That's something I had to look up on my own time and see. But regardless if it is, I just feel like this whole part is unnecessary, other than the fact that it shows us just how vicious and evil Lizard is.
And just how, there's no morals. They're just basically following instinct at that point.
100% just following instinct. Like, because he basically walks over, he like tells Pluto, you need to be a man to do this, and like pushes Pluto off of Brenda and then jumps on top of her himself. And then Pluto tries to retaliate, and he beats the shit out of Pluto, basically, and knocks him down. And to which Pluto then goes into a mad rage and just starts destroying the Airstream.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to talk about the fact that Lizard also ate one of the birds.
Oh, yeah, freaking...
Yeah, he just, like, sees the birds and he goes over, bites his head off, and just
fucking... I'm like, oh, my God. I'm like, that is just so... That's another one of those stereotypical things with the birds. It's just... Rip their head off and drink the blood. Like, Jesus Christ.
It dehumanizes these characters. And, that's what you want in your bad guy of a horror film. You do not want people sympathizing with your bad guy, because if they sympathize with the bad guy, then who are we rooting for here? So they're trying to dehumanize these characters as much as they can.
One of the interesting things when I was reading up about the original was... They kind of, like, the director was kind of talking about how, like, everything they're doing is inexcusable, but based on, like, their past, you understand why they're doing it.
I have that in my notes. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
Sorry.
So we'll come back to that. But regardless, while Lizard and Pluto are attacking Brenda, outside, Doug is trying to put out the fire on Bob. Ethel is rightfully panicking. She's freaking out. Doug tries to get Lynn to take Ethel back inside so that way she can't see this. And eventually, Doug puts the fire out and gets Bob off the tree, but it is too late. Bob has been burnt alive, and he is now dead. Now, when Lynn and Ethel go back inside the trailer, Lynn goes in first because she hears Brenda screaming, so she runs in first, and... I honestly think this part is worse than what has happened up to anything yet. It's just uncomfortable, like, to watch this scene, because whenever Lynn enters the cabin, obviously she is a new mother. She's just given birth recently to this baby. Lizard grabs her, basically, throws her down, and Lynn is cooperating here. Like, obviously she doesn't want to, but she's cooperating because she feels like maybe if she cooperates, they'll get out of this alive. It's
just
kind of
protecting the baby. Because he's got a gun to the baby's head.
He's got a gun to the baby's head. She's trying to protect herself, her baby, and her sister. And Lizard begins to, fondle her. And then he begins to drink from her. Like, why do we need this? I don't know, man. It's just one of those scenes where it's just uncomfy to watch.
I was reading that apparently this scene does happen, or not this specifically, but like the rape scene, it does occur in the original. But I'm gonna make the wild guess that they probably upped the ante with how much they.
I think I would say they definitely upped the ante for this
movie. I don't know
movie.
what it is about movies of the early 2000s having to like up the sexualization factor to an 11 out of 10. It just.
I don't know. I will say though, I'm glad that I think that trend is over now. Now, obviously, yes, does it still happen in movies? Yes. But it's not every single horror movie has a sexual assault scene in it anymore. Like, there are so many good horror movies out there that have nothing to do with sex. I think I'm just, for one, I am grateful that trend is over, because I fall very much in the category to where there is no need, unless it progresses the story, there is no need for sex or nudity in your movie at all. Like, unless it progresses the story along for a valuable reason. And the only reason this scene is in here, I believe, is because it's the gross out factor. It makes you uncomfortable, obviously, and it dehumanizes the bad guys. It just makes you realize how inhuman they are. So, I don't know. I understand it to a point, but I hate this scene with everything, every fiber of my being.
This was the scene that kind of like, I don't want to say it ruined the movie for me, but it just kind of like, I was like, I hate this.
Yeah.
I cannot, I had to just kind of like take that scene and put it over here on the shelf.
It'll just take you and push you all the way over there.
Just,
and the rest of the movie can stay over here. You just don't move. Stop it.
Basically, it's just, ugh.
So after Lizard has, assaulted Lynn, Ethel runs into the trailer and Lizard shoots her point blank in the stomach, and she falls back onto the bed, and she begins to bleed out. And Lynn, trying to defend her family and trying to get her baby, gets up, and I forgot this happened, and I, again, don't know if it happened in the original movie or not, but Lynn here gets shot in the head and killed. And I forgot this happened until I watched this again, and I was like, holy shit, I forgot she wasn't the final girl here. Like, because Lynn has final girl written all over her. And the fact that they just blew her head off.
I was kind of pissed off at this point.
Yeah.
This whole scene was already making me so mad.
And then they go and kill
then they
her.
go and kill the one that kind of like was kind of like, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, because she was the one that was kind of earlier talking as like, you want to get a job and all this.
She's had the most character of anyone really in this whole film so far, and they just went ahead and killed her off. Like, I mean, don't be wrong, I don't want to really see anyone die on screen. I know it's a horror movie got a horror, but you would think for this film particularly that you would kill off Brenda's character before you killed off Lynn's character. Because the way they set the characters up, you would assume Brenda was the one who's going to die first before Lynn.
I was expecting her to be dead by the end of this scene.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked because I was like, she's the one that really was the more kind of like naive and just doesn't know.
Right.
The other girl, she went through birth and all this hardship, so she knows life ain't pretty.
But regardless, Lynn is shot, Ethel has been shot, and it's at this point Lizard and Pluto take Catherine, the baby, and they flee from the scene. And Bobby runs after them and tries to shoot them. And I have in my notes here, it's funny that Bobby and Bob were giving Doug so much shit earlier for not being able to shoot, and yet Bobby can't hit anything in this movie. Like, even later on in the film when he's trying to shoot Papa Jupiter, he's like from me to you away, and he can't hit him with a pistol.
I know, that was pretty...
Yeah. He's got that stormtrooper aim.
Yeah. They definitely pulled the stormtrooper aim.
Yeah. True. So regardless, Doug and Bobby go into the Airstream now. Brenda has been traumatized. She's in the back corner. Ethel is bleeding out on the couch or the bed, and Lynn is lying dead in a pool of blood on the ground. There's this really sad moment when Doug goes up to Lynn because he sees Ethel and then he sees his wife. And obviously it's kind of like Ethel is still living. But obviously he's going to run to his wife. It's just natural instinct, I think, to run to her versus try to help Ethel, even though Ethel's still alive and Lynn is not. But there's a sad moment to where I think kind of like Lynn's like nervous system kicks in before she fully dies. Like, she's dead, but her nervous system kicks in and she like kind of comes back a bit and starts coughing a little bit. And Doug kind of thinks maybe they can help save her, but obviously she dies moments later after that.
I hated this.
Yeah.
It's like, just let her stay dead. Come on, man.
Yeah. And if that wasn't bad enough, he also notices now at this point that Catherine is missing. So his wife is now dead. His baby is now missing. Brenda's traumatized, Bob was burned alive, and now Ethel is dying out on the bed. So this, again, this movie goes from 0 to 100 like that.
Just killed half the family all within like 5 minutes.
Yep.
Like, Jesus Christ.
So there is this nice moment. I do like the characterization here of Doug at this point, because he goes over to Ethel after kind of like some time has passed. He sets her up on the bed. He puts a blanket on her, and he has this really nice moment with her, where she's completely out of it. She's lost like a lot of blood. She's very much loopy, and she's on the verge of death. And she's like, "Oh, it's cold and everything." And she's like shivering. He puts a blanket up over her, and she asks, "Are the kids asleep? Is Lynn out in the car sleeping and everything? Did Bob come back?" And he's just like giving her all these good answers. He's like saying, "Yes, Bob is home. Okay. The kids are asleep. Lynn's in the car asleep. Everything's okay." because he knows these are her final moments before she dies. And they are. This is right before she passes away. And it's just this, it humanizes, again, we just had this horrific scene where it dehumanized the bad guys, and now we have this scene where it's very much humanizing Doug as a character, which is very important to do in a movie like this, because obviously you're going to be rooting for the family, the Carter family, but if you don't have this humanization scene, you're not going to care so much about them. So this kind of makes you, as an audience member, care just a little bit more about Doug, I think.
I think so, especially with like that dynamic with Doug like fighting with the parents. Mm-hmm. In her last moment, she does say something like, you know, now I realize why she loves you so much.
Yeah.
Or she's like, and it was kind of like, for him, it was kind of like, holy shit, they do love me kind of thing. They do see me as family. So that was kind of like, oh, man.
Now, after this moment, we get another gratifying moment where Goggle, who has been watching the family this whole time through binoculars, gets attacked by Beast and gets his throat ripped out.
Gets his jugular just
straight up ripped out and destroyed.
Oh, I was so fucking happy at this scene. I was like, fuck yeah, you go, Beast. I was so fucking, my God, that had me so riled up.
Yeah, because Goggle is presumably the one who killed Beauty, and so Beast just comes up and just mauls him. Now, we didn't mention...
Oh.
You know what I'm going to say already? We didn't mention it, but I want to mention it because, again, another unnecessary scene that made me feel so damn bad was earlier before all this happened, when Beast was let off his chain, he finds Beauty's body and just whimpers and cries. I'm just like, why did we have to include this?
See, it's like, I've seen enough dog dying scenes that I can deal with it. I'm not happy about it, but I can deal with it. Having to have a dog witness the death of, like, basically their lover, or, like, what is the other...
Either their sibling or something.
Yeah,
someone they've known their whole life,
Yeah, and it's like, I'm like, come on, dude. I'm like, it's bad enough you killed a dog. You gotta make another dog basically, like, go meta and watch the suffering, too. Like, this is fucked up.
But this fuels Beast's, primal instinct, and that's why he just devours Goggle and just kills him. He rips his damn arm off, man.
Oh, I was so happy when I saw that. This was like probably the most satisfying scene out of the entire movie.
Yeah. And so after Goggle dies, like we said, Beast kind of shreds him and tears him up. Back at the trailer, obviously Bobby and Brenda and Doug are freaking out. They have no idea what the hell to do. Bobby wants to just go gung-ho, run out there with his gun, try to kill everybody. But Doug slams him against the wall and says, listen, we need to think rationally here. We need to figure out what the hell we're going to do and not just run out there, because the second you run out there, you're dead. He's like, you'll be out there for you'll run 3 feet out there and die. And Bobby, calls him a little bitch and everything, and says he's his dad was right about everything he said about him. But again, this is just emotion speaking here. I don't think Bobby truly believes this about Doug. I think Bobby's just fueled by emotion, because his sister and his parents both just were murdered in front of him.
I mean, Jesus, he's still a kid. Like, what do you expect him to react?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it was kind of a given that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. But regardless, at this point, we hear a voice. We hear a voice call out, Goggle. Goggle, are you there? Goggle, where are you? And we don't know where it's coming from. And so Bobby and Doug shoot a couple rounds around the Airstream. Like, they shoot through the door, they shoot through the floor, and then they go outside, and they realize that what they're hearing is a walkie-talkie that's still attached to the detached arm of Goggle. And Beast is back. He comes back. They all celebrate the fact that Beast is still alive. And they find the walkie-talkie, and Doug takes it off. And he's just like, what the fuck do you want with us? Where's my daughter? What have you done with her? And all we hear from the other side is just the baby start crying. There's no response other than Catherine crying. And so at this point, Doug just kind of looks up, and he's like, we have to do something. And Bobby says, well, what are we going to do? And then we get this great fade away into morning. So it is now morning. Doug has armed himself up with a baseball bat, and he's got Beast on his side, and he decides to set out to go rescue Catherine. He leaves Bobby and Brenda back at the trailer, and they begin to set up like this trap, essentially. I think honestly, Bobby, he's very creative in the way he sets this up because they set around the fishing pole. That's where the fishing pole comes into play.
Yeah.
Set the fishing pole up around a bunch of twigs, so it kind of gets off an alarm to let them know if someone's in the area. And they also rig up a trap to blow up the camper. They have a matchbook in the door, in the slide. And if someone were to slide it open with the gas on, it would ignite the matches and blow up the camper. So he's very smart in thinking about this kind of stuff. But we're going to kind of skip over the majority of stuff that happens with Brendan and Bobby, and we're going to talk mostly about what goes on with Doug.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like the main point here. So as Doug makes his way through the desert, he finds the old mining shaft. He goes through there and comes out on the other end in an abandoned nuclear testing village. And again, this is where all of the mutants live. This is where they call home. And this is where we see kind of like just the devastation of these nuclear tests. Because this place is a wasteland. We in Nuketown, baby.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
all those old Call of Duty fans out there.
Yeah.
We play in Nuketown. So
that's all I could think of was Nuketown because of all the freaking the old TV sets, the different little plastic figurines,
absolutely,
and stuff.
Yeah,
it was definitely like I had Fallout music playing in my head. I don't want to be
set the world on fire.
Yeah.
However, it really honestly was like that. But regardless, we've got this abandoned village, and there's like these the mannequins set up all over the place. But eventually, Doug comes to a house and he finds Catherine inside. He narrowly escapes from one of the mutants whose name is Cyst, and he puts Beast into like this car. He hides out in this car and leaves Beast behind in the car. Says, stay here. I'll come back for you. And so he goes into the house, and here he runs into Big Mama. She's like one of the mutants who is like one of the matriarch of the family. And I have in my notes here, she's watching a TV show, and this TV show is called Divorce Court.
Yeah.
And on this episode of Divorce Court, while Doug is sneaking around behind trying to get Catherine, we hear the judge, ask, is she your child? And the defendant says, no, she's not my child. And I just thought it was very, clever of them to tie that in with the movie, because obviously Doug is taking his daughter back when in reality it's not their kid. They just kidnapped her. So it's like, no, is it your child? No, it's not my child. So that's kind of like the whole idea, I think, going on here with this. So he does get a hold of Catherine, and he goes to slowly back out of the house, and literally he doesn't take 2 feet, like 2 steps away when he gets knocked out by Big Mama. And the screen goes black.
There was in this up like between like when they're hiding inside that car and into there's 2 things that bothered me.
Go ahead.
How the fuck did they get into that car so fast?
Honestly, I know. It's horror movie, got a horror, man. Yeah, you gotta.
I mean, it was like Scooby-Doo and Shaggy kind of like hiding kind of shit.
It really was. Like, they just jumped up into a barrel. And, yeah.
And then, too, how the fuck did Big Mama, like, just... Like,
how quickly she got up there.
The scene was even super fast. Like, it was like he just turns around and is like... I'm like, I thought she was just in the fucking chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was...
I think, again, it just falls victim to the era this movie was made in. It's that style. You have there's a lot of movies of this time period where it's like that. It's just there's inconsistencies in the editing and inconsistencies in the plot, and that's just kind of how this movie falls into that. So, I don't know.
Just a pet peeve of mine.
Just let it it's a horror movie, man. Just let it go. Don't think too deeply into it. So, anyway. So after being knocked out, Doug wakes up inside of a freezer. Like, it's not obviously plugged in. And again, directors of horror movies and writers of horror movies, why must we always put our main character into dead body water? It's not watery. Like, he's just in a pile of dead bodies. But why must our main character always wind up in dead body piles?
I don't know. There's something like about like throwing the main character in like a claustrophobic place, like just He's just stuck. That get me out of here.
Yeah, he's stuck inside the inside the ice box, and he can't get out.
I don't know what it is with that trope. For sure.
I don't know. He pulls a box of matches out and lights it, and he sees all the dead bodies around him. I'm just like, why? Why is this a thing?
How can he not? Well, it was like the lighting too. It was like, how the fuck does he not see? I'm like, does he not realize there's a guy?
I think it's convenience for us to see it before he sees it. Because you kind of have to assume that it's darker for him than it is for us. They just lit it up for us to see it.
Right.
But aside from the fact that he can't see it, surely you would smell it. He's in a pile of rotting bodies in the desert.
I mean, how does that feel? Like, I just kind of, it's like, ugh. Like, it just makes my back kind of curl. Just,
it's just like a pool of Jello, man.
It's just, cartilage
squish.
and.
So. God dang it. Anyway, eventually he's able to escape, and I also love the way they shot this too, because they cut to the outside. He's like banging on the roof of the ice box, and his baseball bat just like hopping up and down because he's like hitting it so hard. It's just like boom, da boom, da boom. So he finally escapes out, and he starts walking through the house again, and he encounters another mutant whose name is Big Brain, and Big Brain is singing the national anthem. So I wanted to, ask your opinion on this. Why do you think they picked the national anthem for him to be singing at this point? Why not something else? What is your opinion on this?
So this one I struggled a little bit with. I was trying to decide if basically they were trying to show that like these people were normal people at one point, and they still have all of their memories.
Of like definitely, yeah.
They have all of their memories of this mine town they're in. I don't know too if it's like a longing for them to have what they once had too, maybe, and they're just kind of like stuck on the past. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the reason why they're doing a lot of this stuff is because they're pissed about what happened to them, and so I think they don't let go of what.
They're holding a grudge for sure.
Yeah.
I don't really have a good answer. I just wanted to ask you what your opinion on that was, because I just noticed like why the national anthem? Is it because are we really trying to drive home that political point of this film so much that we have to sing the national anthem?
I think they really shoved a lot of political imagery in this whole movie.
Absolutely. The fact that Doug has a American flag shoved through his head.
Yeah, well, and then too, Bob even like makes a point that everyone's got to pray before we all go out and do our thing too. Mm-hmm. And that kind of like drove home that stereotypical American white picket fence family, strong Christian, and all that. And so I really did kind of struggle with this, because I was just like, what do you get trying to tell me with him singing that? Is he just fucking crazy? Is that just all it is? He's just fucking crazy?
Well, he can't leave that. Like, he's been in that room for who knows how long.
Jesus Christ, how long has he been singing that anthem? Is he just singing every day or something?
Yeah. Well, then, too, you also have to consider as well, if these people were mutated due to the radiation fallout of the nuclear bombs, they had to have been here for a while. Like, if we're thinking this happened, because back in like the 40s, if we're thinking this is back in the 40s, and I don't know when this movie takes place. I don't know if it's supposed to be 2006 or not, but if it is 2006, it's been 60 years then for this. They don't know the outside world. They're not going to have really anything else to sing. All the songs that they're going to know are going to be the ones they knew from back in the day.
I mean, that's the only other thing.
Except for Big Mama, who's watching Divorce Court on a TV.
The only other thing I can think of, and I still don't even really think this is the point, is just like this idea of like blind patriotism or anything like that. Like,
I like that idea. I hadn't thought about that, but I think that's a good point.
Because I kind of get that idea that like at the end of the day, they probably still have like all of those values stuck in their brain at the end of the day. Like, they still function as a family. They sort of have a nuclear family still going on, even though they're all mutants.
They're a nuclear family that's nuclear.
Yes. Yes. So that's kind of like some of the vibes I get from that scene.
Yeah.
Just some commentary about how America and patriotism and some of the crazy shit we did during wars or during the nuclear testing kind of stuff that we used to do. I mean, this is stuff that actually like not this specifically, but
right.
Nuclear testing happened.
Yeah.
We've had atomic bombs. We've used all kinds of chemical warfare back in the 60s. All this shit happened. So like some of the stuff that this movie touches on is not very far-fetched at all.
Exactly. So my next point I have on here is Doug walks up to Big Brain and talks to him a little bit. And this is where we kind of get the moralistic point, the moralistic theme of the movie here. Big Brain kind of poses the idea of, you did this to us. You are the reason we are like this.
You made us this way.
You made us this way, yeah. Meaning the civilized people made them this way. Because what we learn here is that the mutant family, they are the miners who refused to leave their homes whenever they did the nuclear testing. And so therefore they had that radiation, and that's why they are the way they are. So what are you going to say?
So this was another thing that kind of got me. I felt like this was also kind of like the rural versus the city kind of, or like the big city government kind of like doing their thing and like kind of overtaking like what the rural people that are just minding their own business want.
Yeah.
And then you get in, so you have the miners who are stubborn and they stay and they're just like, oh, okay, press button. Like,
we're going to blow them up regardless.
So if you're going to do that, like, fine, we'll just be as evil as you bastards are.
And that's what I want to touch on here. It's the moralistic point of the film. The government forced the miners out of their homes and then just blew their homes up. And so that inadvertently turned them into mutants because they refused to leave. So are they really to blame for the events of this movie? Yes, the mutants do ungodly things. Like they do horrible things, unforgivable things. However, they are the way they are because the civilized people conducted the nuclear tests. They're not blameless, but there is a moral point to be made with that.
It's kind of like some of the commentary about in the political environment that people have talked about like, are people, did people do this because of environmental factors or are they really just like this?
Yeah.
Like, would these people have went and killed out a bunch of people if they weren't mutants? Probably not.
Right. If they were just normal people, would they still be cannibalistic? Would they still, be living the way they are? We don't know. We don't know what they were like beforehand. Or are they just using this as a crutch? They're just like, oh, they did this to us, so we must now get revenge on everyone who's normal.
I think
on
that's
all the civilized people.
This is kind of like that polarization, political divide thing too. I think that they kind of touch on for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know that I have much of an answer except for the fact here that in my next part here, if we go back to the Carter family, Doug is seemingly the most civilized of that whole family. He is the most put together. He's the most rational. He's the most thought out character. But he's often looked down on for being weak and a liberal. But what they mock him in the end, he's able to shed, and just becomes capable of these truly barbaric acts. So the question remains: who really is the mutants? Like who are the barbaric people in this movie? Is it the mutants or is it the civilized people? Because you look at the way Doug ends up this film and he bashes skulls in. He pickaxes people on the head.
It was crazy. At one point, he even throws some social engineering in there.
Yeah.
Where he starts to pretend like he's crying, like, please don't kill me. Please don't do it. And then he just fucking jabs that screwdriver in.
Yeah. So
I love that. Yeah.
We'll talk about that when we get to it. Yeah. But it's just he is able to mercilessly. I can't. Why am I having an aneurysm?
You're catching on what I was doing earlier.
I know.
It's like a disease.
He's able to kill without mercy in the most barbaric ways. So the question goes: who are the true civilized people in this movie?
At this point, I don't think you can really see
I think this movie sheds that uncomfortable light on humanity that people don't want to talk about much, to where in the moment humans are capable of doing the most ungodly things possible. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are or your background. It matters what's going on in that moment. And in that moment, humans are fucked up.
Well, I mean, yeah, I do think that, especially since this movie was around, at least the original, and so they had to build on some of this. I think the original movie, you know, being around the Cold War times, had a lot of commentary about, like, yeah, we haven't used these missiles yet, but damn, if we did, we could fucking destroy everything.
Yep.
It's like you got that facade of the white picket fence, and then in the background you got Fallout, baby.
And you just also, I think, further drive my point home. Who's in charge of these missiles that can just destroy everything? The government. The government are civilized people. In the terms of what you think civilization is.
Institutions. Yeah, you think of institutions and civilized people and control.
But, however, you just said, we've got these nuclear weapons. We could fuck your world up if we wanted to. Well, that is not a very civilized
There's a
thought.
lot of other movies where that's a big idea where, you know, someone presses all it takes is someone to press the first button and everyone's going to fight or flight react.
Yep. And this movie, essentially, for better or worse, in a way, this movie essentially is just proving the same point that The Lord of the Flies proves.
Yes.
That when all inhibitions are down, humans will do what they must to survive. Regardless of the outcome, regardless of what happens,
doesn't matter what your values are. Yep. You will do what it takes.
You will do what it takes to survive. And I think that's what this movie hits at its rawest point, is that humans will do what is necessary to survive, regardless of how civilized you may be, regardless of whatever your background is. You are going to do it in the moment, what it takes to live. So there's some analysis for y'all, I think. I don't know if I've got much else to say after that on analysis stuff. We'll talk more about that towards the end. We got some movie left to recap.
Absolutely.
On. Yeah. So we'll talk about your part you were mentioning here, where Pluto comes in now, because after getting done talking to Big Brain, he calls in Pluto, and Pluto just, you know, right through the wall, just breaks,
just Hulk smash,
just Hulk smashes through the wall.
Oh yeah,
he Kool-Aid Man's through the wall. It's just like Big Brain's like, oh no, and Doug's like, oh no, and he's like, oh no,
oh yeah,
oh yeah. So Pluto just jumps through the wall, Kool-Aid Man style, and we have an epic showdown. There's a lot of, you know, fighting and blood going on here, and it's at one point, obviously Pluto gets the upper hand several times, and at the end here, we think he's finally going to kill Doug with his axe. And this is what you were saying. Doug puts on this whole facade. He was like, please don't kill me. And Big Brain's in the back mocking him. He's like, oh, please don't kill me. You know, everything. He's like,
oh, they're just eating this shit up.
They're eating it up, yeah. And Pluto turns around to laugh at Big Brain's jokes. And in that moment, Doug pulls out a screwdriver and stabs it through Pluto's foot, gets the upper hand, takes the American flag from Bob's head, jams it through the back of Pluto's neck, through his throat, and then to put the cherry on top, takes Pluto's axe and hacks his head off. Well, it puts it into his head, I guess I should say.
Definitely double tapped there.
100% double tapped him there, yeah. And then before anything really can happen to Big Brain, Doug leaves and ends up killing the other mutant, Cyst, which is out. He's been out patrolling outside. And so, again, that just further drives home the point here that Doug is doing what it takes to survive in this moment. He's doing what's good for his family, no matter how barbaric these acts might be. Now, after killing Cyst, Big Brain gives the call to Lizard to kill the baby. And right after he gives that order, guess who shows up?
Beast,
baby.
Oh my God. I was like, oh, I mean, at this point, I think they're just trying to, like, they're like, will you forgive us now?
Will you forgive us about the one dog? Yeah.
Like, will you forgive us now? Listen, we let the dog kill 2 motherfuckers for you.
Yep. So Beast jumps in and mutilates and murders Big Brain. And after this happens, we cut to Catherine, and we assume Lizard's going to be there to kill her. But in reality, Ruby's there. Ruby has overheard this order, and so she takes Catherine and saves her before Lizard can get there and escapes out through the hills. Also, too, we haven't mentioned, I mentioned earlier, you said Ruby was the youngest person in the family. She's not. We have Venus and Mercury, who are the 2 little kids. we don't get a lot from them. They're in like one scene, but I just wanted to mention them because they're just sitting there playing toys. Like, will you come play with us? It's just like,
I was like, this is one of those scenes where you just like, if I was there, I'd be like, oh hell no, and just walk out.
It's the creep factor. Yeah, they're there to just be creepy little kids because rule of thumb, if there's a little kid in a horror movie, they're gonna be scary as fuck.
Listen, I've never been more horrified of children than in horror movies. Like, they're normally the creepiest fucking... Like, I mean, there's movies where they focus on just children.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, horror movies that involve children, the children are always going to be creepy. It happens.
God, it's like I got all those like little children rhyme songs just playing in my head.
Mm-hmm. Like think of Nightmare on Elm Street, where you've got like the girls jump roping and they're singing like the song, and then also you've got Pet Sematary, where you've got the Gage, who is like a murderous little baby who got brought back from. You know, it's little kids in horror movies, man. They're terrifying.
Oh yes.
So after Ruby takes off with Catherine, Big Brain's dead. Lizard is hunting after Ruby now because he realizes that Ruby has taken the baby, and Doug is trying to find the baby. We cut back to Brenda and Bobby. They are outside talking whenever they hear the alarm system they set up go off, and they know someone's there. So they go into the camper and prep for it, and they get chased down by Papa Jupiter. And he's trying to attack them, and so they lure him out with their system. They sneak out through the window while he's trying to break in the main door, and the second he opens up that door, he sets off the trap, and he gets blown up by the camper.
Yep.
So it destroys the airstream, and it also blows him up in that wake. I'm going to go ahead and just finish up his side of the storyline before we cut back to Doug, because it's just easier than cutting back and forth. But Jupiter does not die. He just gets wounded. He's like impaled on a spike. And Bobby and Brenda walk up to him, and before Bobby can do anything, Brenda comes up with his pickaxe and just drives it into his skull and just kills him. And I love this because I love the fact that she's been able to overcome this trauma that happened to her and fight back now. She's no longer, weak or scared like she has been up until this point. She's now capable, and basically just a big old fuck you pickaxe to the face.
I definitely think this was like her closure.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Everything that happened is like, nope, fuck
100%.
You're gonna do this shit. Fuck that.
Yeah. and I love that for her.
Yeah, I really do. This is one of those just like, not that gore makes me feel good, but just like you just kind of feel.
It was a feel good moment because it was like it was very cathartic just to have her
absolutely.
get that kind of closure there. Now, obviously, Jupiter's not the one who attacked her, but still, he's part of that clan and family, and so it's
close enough.
It's
guilty by association,
right? Also, too, real quick, before we move off of this, Jupiter is also the only one who's not mutated. In the X-ray notes, again, they had a thing where they were going to have Jupiter have a parasitic twin, like sibling, jutting out of his chest. But they opted against it just so he'd be the only one who's not mutated. So he's just a normal human, but he is the patriarch of this family.
I did notice. I was wondering if he was mutated or not, because I noticed that he was not really. He just looked kind of dirty, and that's kind of it.
He's just grungy.
Just grungy.
Yeah,
he just got that grungy look. Yeah.
So yeah, he's not mutated. He's the only one who is not. So back to Doug. Doug ends up catching up with Ruby. And Ruby's just about to give him Catherine. She's like, here, okay, take her. I saved her for you, because there is some humanistic aspect to Ruby that is not in the rest of her family. She's able to relate to them, and we don't get a whole lot of insight into why. Like, we don't really get a reason why she's like human. I'm not human, but like a very humanistic character. And I wish we did. This was one of those things where I felt like there was some oversight, and basically one of my big criticisms of this movie is that there's just not enough character development for a lot of these characters, because I want to know what drives her. Mm-hmm. Why is she driven to be different? She's being raised. It's like, in a sense, that like she's kind of like also given the middle finger to that idea that people are only raised up by their environmental factors. That there is either whatever you want to call it. It's nature versus nurture,
genetic, whatever. Yeah, nature versus nurture. It's like, I wanted to know, why is she like this? Why does she actually have empathy, unlike her
Right? Why is she able to
counterparts?
show empathy towards these people when the rest of her family cannot?
I don't.
Yeah, it just left a big plot hole there, and I wish we got more of it. I don't know if they touched more on it in the 70s version. I'm not sure, but I wanted more of Ruby's character. I wanted to know more about her story and her history and why she had that empathy when no one else did. But regardless, before she's able to give Doug the baby, Lizard shows up and attacks them, and we get another brutal fight here where Doug just gets the shit beat out of him by Lizard, but eventually gets the upper hand and is able to put Lizard down with the couple blasts of Sis's shotgun. So Ruby then gives Doug his daughter back, but before he's able to leave, Lizard jumps back up, because obviously you gotta have one final scare of your horror movie. Still alive, and goes to shoot Doug, but Ruby tackles him off of a cliff, and they both crash down to the ground below, dying.
Another scene, I was just very like, I was kind of pissed because as soon as I saw him lay the gun down beside him, I'm like, oh fuck.
It's the cabin in the wood effect, man.
Yeah,
because it's just like that. You know, the main character kills the bad guy, and just has to toss the gun aside because there's an electrical shock that goes through his hand. It makes him toss the gun aside. You've seen Cabin in the Woods,
yes,
right?
I have. I forgot about
The guys in the basement push a little button, makes him shock himself, and drops his gun. That's why they all drop the gun in horror movies, because there's men in the basement controlling everything around them.
God, I love that movie so much. It was such a good movie.
It's a great movie, yeah. But regardless, Ruby and Lizard are now both dead because Ruby sacrificed herself to save Doug and Catherine. Again, great. Love it. Fantastic. Good on you, Ruby. You did a great thing. Why? Why though? He's technically your family. He's really your brother or cousin or something. Why sacrifice yourself for this man you do not know? Why is she so empathetic? Someone tell me, please. Can we get more backstory?
The only context I felt like we got from the movie is it did seem like her family kind of bullied her. It seemed like she was kind of like the
everyone though. And I don't think they bullied her enough to the point where she's just like, yeah, I'm gonna kill my whole family now. So
I don't know. I don't know if it's just she's just not. She's like I don't know if you want to go into that alpha beta kind of thing where she's just kind of the weakling, and so she just never gets the courage to do anything about anything.
Yeah,
I have no idea. You don't really see her snap or anything. I definitely do think they could have given some more insight to like how that family operated by developing her more.
Yeah. I wish there was more character development with Ruby, but we don't get it, unfortunately. So after Lizard and Ruby die, Doug heads off back towards the campsite where he joins back up with Bobby and Brenda. He also has Beast with him as well. Beast does survive the film, y'all. The dog lives. One of the dogs live. And we get this lovely moment where they're all joyful back together. They've defeated all the evil people that are out in the hills. And then the camera zooms out.
Or did they?
And reveals they're being watched through a set of binoculars. Dun, dun, dun. And the movie ends like that. So, sets it up for the sequel. We're not going to talk about the sequel. The sequel's trash.
I have heard that.
The sequel is actual garbage.
I was starting to watch the trailer for it because I actually ordered the Blu-ray that comes with both movies, the first and the second unrated.
Okay, did you?
Yeah, so I'm going to watch the second one soon to get it out of the way.
Yeah, go ahead and watch it, but I'm going to let you know now.
I'm already upset. Yeah, it's just garbage.
Yeah.
Just watching the trailer, I'm like, oh my God, like, come on.
So that brings us to the end of our discussion on The Hills Have Eyes. I believe we talked enough about the analytical side of things in that discussion. I don't really have much else to add to it. Jason, do you have anything else to add for analytics, or analysis of it? Do you think? I guess I'll ask you. Other than what we discussed so far, if you think this film is making a statement or a central theme of this film, what would it be?
So the problem is, from a 2020 perspective, or a 2021 perspective, really, like I can see the big theme of like the divide. Mm-hmm. You know, you have the left and the right. You have the city and the rural. You have people who see these people as savages, and you have these people who see these people as savages.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's really what they were trying to get across, you know, when this movie first came out.
I think looking through a 2020 lens, though, that's definitely the point we get from this film.
Because I was researching a little bit on the 1970 movie, and he talks a little bit about like class structure, you know, like the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. I told you I was going to get it in there. I had to.
He did. He texted me and he said, I want to say the bourgeoisie at least once in this episode.
So I don't know. I really think I really kind of struggled with that because I felt like I was, you know, looking through a 2021 lens and relating to it from that standpoint. I do think the biggest thing that they are commenting on is just the human savagery that we can resort ourselves to in any situation, whether it's political, whether it's a social or a culture thing. I mean, you look at everything across the human like existence or condition, and everything's got a bad aspect to it. Mm-hmm. Every religion's got its own bad aspect. Every political party, every country has their own thing that they're known for being bad at.
Yeah.
Humanity is not perfect. And this movie just shows another example of where what seems to be, you know, a perfect freedom-loving country can also be an imperialistic authoritarian bastard that just throws nukes wherever it feels like, because it's just going to... They got another goal that they find more important, which is to have the most military might, supposedly. Could be one thing, I guess. Maybe I got a little too political there.
You're starting to get off on your soapbox, man. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have much else to say. I think I covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover earlier on in the episode about my analysis of it. I do think, you know, they might not have been trying to hit it as hard in 2006 as it hits now. There's definitely the political side of things in there also, but I just think I can't watch this movie and take anything else away from it other than the fact, if there is anything to take away from this movie at all, I think it's the fact that when it comes down to it, who's really the human in this movie? You know, who's the barbarian? Who's the civilized person?
This is what I was trying to break down before I got on my soapbox. You got on your soapbox,
yeah. And then regardless if you are that barbarian or regardless if you are that civilized person, you will do no matter what it takes to survive. So
I think that's kind of the gist of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of my analysis of this movie. If you guys have a different analysis or any other thoughts, let me know in the comments down below or on Discord. Links in the description. So I think that wraps up our discussion of this film. But before we end it, we got to rank our final girl. And Jason, we have 3 final girls this episode because we're going to rank Doug, Bobby, and Brenda because they all 3 survive. I would say we rank Beast 2. Beast getting an S.
Oh, absolutely.
Beast gets an S.
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
Actually, we're gonna make a new category. If the animals survive the film, they're gonna get good boy category.
Good boy category.
So Beast, he's got good boy status. All right. So let's go ahead and just start off. We'll start with Brenda and work our way up to Doug. So what would you rank Brenda from S to F? For those who don't know, we rank our Final Girls here on the Final Girl podcast based on their ability to overcome their oppressor and based on their wits and their smarts and the skills they bring to the table and also the development that they go throughout the film. So where would you put Brenda?
So
S being the best, F being the worst.
I'm very inclined just based on like, yes, I'm still new to horror movies and stuff technically. Mm-hmm. I'm very inclined to just give her an F. She just doesn't really... She doesn't really do anything. She kills one person after the fact, but like she just kind of gets used as a torture scene and then kind of thrown to the side and just there while Bobby's kind of protecting her the whole time. Okay. Yeah, she overcomes, but I'm kind of like, did she really? Or is she just kind of just pissed off and just kind of... I'd be willing to give her a D.
Okay.
But probably not.
All right. So this is probably one of the first times that I'm heavily disagreeing with you. Not just with you, but with a co-host I've had on this show. Because I'm giving her a solid B. And I'm going to give her a B because yes, you're right. There is a lot to Brenda where she doesn't do a whole lot. She doesn't, she doesn't fight a ton. She doesn't do a lot story-wise. However, if you look at her character development throughout the film, she starts out as kind of just like one of those like bratty teenagers. She's like, I'm going to go to Cabo with my friends. I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't care about my family. But as time progresses on, she realizes just how important family is to her more and more. And then also, too, she gets very traumatized in the middle of the film and is able to come back and overcome that trauma and move beyond it and learn from it. Like, she grows as a person. It's not just she's overcoming that trauma. She ends up growing as a person towards the end of the film and growing in her character because of the events that she goes through. And I think ultimately that kind of growth boosts her up to a B, at least in my mind, because you're right. She doesn't do a whole lot. So therefore I can't give her an A or an S. I think like mid to low B, that was good for me because she does end up coming back, killing Jupiter, and she like helps Bobby set up the traps and everything. And she does have that cunningness in her and that growth overall booster, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that. And starting to think about just like little details throughout the movie. And also the fact that she's not the only survivor here. So maybe that detracts from it, like relatively is maybe my problem.
Right.
But like you do see her like have a big hug scene with Bobby. Like, oh my God, you're alive. Thank God. And so she does develop. I'll give her good character development. I still feel like personally that she still seems to be too like on the sidelines.
Don't let me sway you. If you want to keep it, keep your score. That's fine.
I just still feel like she's too much on the sidelines for her to be of any, like, I just don't know what the movie would, like, is she really that important to the movie, or was she just a freaking, just used for a torture scene? That was kind of it. That's kind of like, just from my point of view, it just didn't seem like she was much of anything other than... Now, maybe, looking into it that deep, I can see that.
Yeah. But that's my job. I dig in deep. So.
Face value, I just don't see much value.
Okay.
As a final girl.
All right. So let's go on to Bobby now. Where would you rank Bobby on the scale?
He definitely did a lot more. But he also, like, sucked ass while he did it.
Yeah.
And was kind of a little bitch throughout the movie, too. He did develop some, but, like, looking back, I don't think he developed as much as, say, she did.
Yeah.
I might give him a C, maybe. I guess I would give him a C because he did, like, go full survivalist the last few moments of the movie. I'd probably give him a C before that.
Okay.
He survived.
He does survive.
And he doesn't goof off either. I mean, he picks the pieces up too. Like, as soon as it happens, he's trying to figure out what the hell to do. I mean, super paranoid. He knew immediately, like, he was smart enough to realize, that wasn't no coyote that killed my dog. So I might give him a C, but I don't really see him as like a superstar at all in this either. I
also agree. I don't believe he's a superstar. His development's weak, if any. I mean, you're right. He's kind of whiny a little bit throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
He's a terrible shot. I will give him points for his cunningness and for his ability to rig up that trap and everything.
Yeah.
And he survives, but ultimately he's going low C for me.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm definitely with you on that one.
That's where I'm putting Bobby.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, we've got Doug. Where are you going to put Doug at? So
Doug, as a character, I I loved him. I don't know what it was. I really loved like him going from, nerdy ass cell phone salesman. He's trying to get self-service, out in the desert. Like, come on. It's like,
he's like 97% coverage.
97%. I'm just like,
and we're in that 3% where we don't have any service.
I was like just waiting for a fucking T-Mobile ad to just come up as soon as that happened. But yeah, his total 180 of character, and the fact that he does whatever it fucking takes to protect his kid. Does whatever it takes. He lets go of enough of his rationality and almost like goes into the mind of how these mutants work.
Yeah.
What has he seen so far that he just plays them like a fiddle at the end of this movie. Like he plays their psychology really good. He just gets them to think he's at his weakest when he's really
absolutely. He does a great job with that. Yeah.
That was, at the very least, I would give him a solid A just because of all that. I don't know if I'd give him an S, but I definitely do think he deserves a solid A.
Mm-hmm. And again, I agree with you on this one too. I'm putting him on an A as well. I think I did not like Doug in the beginning of the film.
I didn't either. I actually thought he was a little
whiny bitch. I didn't like him at all. And then the second shit hits the fan, he's able to be rational. He's able to be level-headed. He can think straight. He's able to overcome all of the challenges. He does everything he needs to do because of his family. Like, his wife dies. He realizes his baby's gone. He puts that grief aside and goes to try to rescue his daughter.
He basically grew up.
He grew up in an instant.
Yeah, it was like, it was impressive to me, just like, not everyone can do that.
Right.
A lot of people, they just, like Bobby, just...
it would make them crumble and they would just, fall apart. And he's able to keep himself together, both mentally and physically, and able to play mind games with with the mutants and able to take them down. And so I think his sheer willpower and his growth throughout the film, I think ultimately he's going to get an A. Now, I will say it is a low A because ultimately at the end, he is saved by Ruby. If Ruby was not there, first of all, his daughter would die. Second of all, he would have been shot in the back by Lizard. So it is a low A for me because he is saved at the end by Ruby. So I think everything else up to that point is great, but then he drops a little bit just because he did not kill the last bad guy. So
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I was thinking of all the good things he did. And that was my pet peeve too, is the drop the shotgun.
He dropped the shotgun,
like, come on, dude. I'm like, you've been smart this entire movie, and now you're just going to think that's a good idea?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm definitely with you on why that would be an A-. Yeah.
Yep. So that is our ranking of the final girls in this movie. But before we go, everyone, we've got one final thing for you here.
Oh, God. Okay.
It is time for everyone's favorite segment of the Final Girl podcast. Something I've newly coined this segment here. So after the episode with Michael, where we did the horror movie trivia, it's no longer just horror movie trivia. It is now health shot horror trivia.
Health shot.
Yes, because I have brought yet another health shot. This one is the digestion health shot. This one is ginger and apple cider vinegar and carrot juice. I still can't find the wheatgrass shots. If I can ever find the wheatgrass shots, we will only have wheatgrass shots because those are actually disgusting. But this one is carrot juice, apple cider vinegar, and ginger. So, Jason, here's the stakes of health shot horror trivia. I'm going to give you 3 trivia questions. Okay? These ones actually is going to be a special kind of thing because I'm going to give you 3 quotes. And you need to tell me what movie they're from. I will give you bonus points if you can tell me the character who said it too.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what the hell the bonus point's going to be. It's going to be like, high five. Great. But regardless, if you can tell me the character, that'll be great as well. I'm going to start you off on an easy one. Okay? There's honestly no way you're going to get this wrong. And if you get this wrong, I'm going to be real upset. Also, for those who don't know, if you get 2 of the 3 questions right, I take the shot. Okay. If you don't, you take the shot.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to start you off easy. Here is your quote. Question number 1. You know it's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare, eh?
Halloween?
Yes, of course it's Halloween. God, okay. If you got that wrong.
Oh my God. I was like panicking. I'm like, holy shit.
All right. Let's see here. Next one. All right. Ready? Question 2. Don't blame the movies. The movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
Was that Scream?
It was Scream. Which means now, regardless if you get this last one wrong, I take the shot. But let's make it. You want to double or nothing this?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
I'll double or nothing.
All right, great. This last one, you have to tell me the movie and the character who said it.
Okay.
And if you can't, you take that shot.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
I just made a mistake, guys. I never know character names.
You ready to lose?
Yes, I'm ready to lose.
All right. It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Oh, God.
Can you at least tell me the movie?
I just used it as a gift, man. I don't remember what it's from.
You don't remember what that's from?
No, I don't know.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
I legit do not remember what it's from.
All right. That is from Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that.
And the character is Buffalo Bill, who is also played by Ted Levine.
God.
I gave you
I
that
knew
one
the reference. This is the
because I
worst.
was like, come on, we just talked about Ted Levine in this movie. Surely he's gonna get that.
No.
So, all right. Well, you double or nothing, and you lost. So this shot is all yours, my friend. I'd give it a good shake before you take it, though. Some of this settle at the bottom a little bit. Yeah. There you go.
Some of that sediment like in a glass of wine.
So I hope that's delicious for you. Can I smell it, though, before you take it? Because Michael smelled it last time when I did take it, and I want to know what it smells like. So,
You gotta,
have fun with that.
Oh my God.
Attaboy. I hate you for how easy you took that, because I must have got the one I had last time must have been work. Oh, there's a little bit of something. There's a little bit.
God. Listen, it's my college days, okay? Just taking shit you don't know what's in
Taking
it.
shots of random shit and just going with it.
Just going with it. Well, so my dad's also a health freak a little bit, and so he used to he talked a lot about drinking apple cider and stuff. So I was like,
I was really hoping the apple cider was going to come through strong on this.
Oh, it did. Don't you worry. It did. I'm really holding my composure really hard right now. It is burning right here. I can feel my face I'm like, fuck. Don't you worry. It got me good. I just, practice,
shoot.
baby.
All right, guys. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode of the Final Girl Podcast. Jason, thank you for being on again today, sir.
My pleasure.
He says that as he's tearing up over here. If you guys, messed that up. 13 Palm Trees Podcast Productions. They bring you this show. They bring you other great shows such as D&D Kinda, Gurus of Gaming, where you can find this guy right here.
Hello.
Video Game Mythos. That's it. Used to be Wasted Local Talent. I don't know if Wasted Local Talent's coming back or not, though.
If they're just on a hiatus or if it's actually...
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that one. But if they come back, Wasted Local Talent, you guys can find that one as well. Facebook.com/Final Girl Podcast. You can find us there for more information about the show. Patreon.com/Final Girl Podcast. If you guys want to support us, you guys can do so there. $5 a month will get you access to the Movie of the Month Club. We have a good time whenever we do that. We need to do another one of those soon, so we'll get around to doing that eventually. Instagram @Final Girl Podcast. Also, I just started a TikTok account, so if you guys want to follow us on TikTok, it's @The Final Girl Podcast. I post funny clips of the video on there, so if you guys don't want to watch the YouTube videos, you can just find the funny clips I post on there. along with other, like, I'm going to start putting other, like, horror content on there as well. I just haven't got around to it yet. But I've just been posting some funny clips of the show on there. So check out us on TikTok. Also follow us on YouTube. The channel is The Final Girl Channel. I changed the name for the YouTube channel because I felt like it made more sense to be called The Final Girl Channel than I did The Final Girl Podcast.
I think that makes sense, yeah.
It's no longer consistent with the rest of the show's stuff, but it's still able to be found on YouTube, The Final Girl Channel. So subscribe to us on there for more episodes of the podcast. Jason, once again, thank you for being here. I appreciate you, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're just loving that shot, aren't you?
Oh my god, dude, it is sitting like like a rock right here.
Your tumbley's making the rumblies that only hands can satisfy. Anyone get that reference? If not, all right, great. Thanks you guys so much for listening. I appreciate all of you. Until next time, take it easy.
Look, movies like this end when the final girl kills the main bad guy and the credits roll.